Hi everybody, welcome to Sunya. Yes, welcome to the worksheet discussion from the Environment Prelims Crash Course 2023. Okay, in today's crash course, we are going to discuss the topic number 5, which is related to the acts and legislations related to environment. Okay, so this is an important component of the Prelims Crash Course. So, those of you who are wondering, this is the chapter number 8. Okay, so you can go through your notes, you should read about that. You can also see the lecture before you attempt this worksheet. Okay, so let's start. We'll see question number 1. So the question number 1 is related to Biological Diversity Act 2002. Now we've seen this act at least in 2 or 3 places when we discussed the Convention on Biodiversity, when we also discussed specifically the chapter related to biodiversity. Okay, we've seen it. Okay, so it's a 3 statement question. So we'll see again. Please see, it's asking you which is correct. So it provides for the people biodiversity register. Okay, to document the details of local biological resources and traditional knowledge. Yes, that's absolutely correct. So when we're going to document the knowledge, that is going to prevent biopiracy. Okay. Now please go back to the lecture. We have discussed terms like what is biopiracy, what is bioprospecting, etc. Right? So this is going to help. In fact, I also spoke about traditional knowledge digital library. Okay, so now tell me in the comments, under which ministry is it going to be formed. Okay, second, National Biodiversity Authority has the exclusive jurisdiction in all matters. Number one, exclusive and all matters related to access by Indians for commercial purposes. Now, when we spoke about this particular act, okay, so I told you that it creates a three-tier mechanism. You have the National Biodiversity Authority, of course, at the national level. You also then have the State Biodiversity Authority, and at the local level, you have the different committees. Okay, so in that we had already seen that, of course, National Biodiversity Authority does not have exclusive jurisdiction in all the matters. In some cases, the state bodies and other bodies also have some specific jurisdiction. All right. So second statement is not correct. Third statement, Central Groundwater Authority. Okay, this body, by the way, in the last 3 years has been asked twice by UPSC, was constituted under Biological Diversity Act. Now this is actually wrong. Okay, this body is constituted under Environment Protection Act of 1986. Okay, which makes again statement 3 is also wrong. So statement 3 is wrong. Here only statement 1 is correct. Now, Biological Diversity Act, you should also read about, because the 15th Conference of Parties, okay, the Kunming Montreal Biodiversity Framework is also in news. Secondly, some amendments have also been proposed to this act. We've already covered the important amendments of the act, right? So please try to recall it. In case you're not able to recall it, please refer the notes or at least go through the lecture. All right. Also, you have this term also in news, biodiversity heritage site. So yes, this is an important aspect of current affairs. For example, in Tamil Nadu, it has gotten its first biodiversity heritage site. The name is Aritapatti. Okay, in Tamil Nadu, it's a biodiversity heritage site. Now, one question can be asked from you, whether this site has any statutory backing or not. So yes, this site is declared under the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. So this again can be asked, or perhaps where is Aritapatti or in which state? So they can ask these questions. So revise this. All right. Second, Environment Protection Act 1986. So first of all, you need to know that it was formed because of you had in 1972 Stockholm Conference. Okay. And of course, in 1984, the tragic Bhopal gas tragedy. Okay, because of all these two events, we had a comprehensive Environment Protection Act. So, number one, in the wake of Bhopal gas tragedy, the government enacted is in our Article 253. Yes, absolutely correct. This statement. Okay. Second, the purpose is to implement the decisions of United Nations Conference on Human Environment. Now, some of you might not be knowing that the Stockholm Conference, okay, which happened in the year 1972. In fact, 1972, you also have the body of UNEP coming up, which is headquartered in Nairobi. Fine. So the alternative name is known as the United Nations Conference on Human Environment. So yes, it's absolutely correct. Third, the act empowers the state government. No, it empowers the central government to set up authorities to prevent environmental pollution, right? So third statement is of course wrong. Now, what will UPSC ask you? One is of course the powers which is under the act. So please remember this is empowering the central government. Second question, what they can ask you, what are the statutory bodies which are formed under the act? Okay. So one very important body is Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. And second, we've already seen this Central Groundwater Authority. Okay. So that also is important. We've already done this in a lot of detail in our classes. Okay. So in any case, if you're not able to recall, please revisit the lecture. Statement 3 is wrong. So answer is here 1 and 2. Okay. Then I was telling you about this Kunming Biodiversity Fund. Okay. And of course, you have the Kunming Declaration on Biodiversity. Now, first of all, it is saying it is related to UNFCCC. Very simply, you should know number one, you had the Rio Summit of 1992. We've done this in a lot of detail. In this, you had United Nations Framework on Climate Change. We also had United Nations Convention on Biodiversity and United Nations Convention for Preventing Desertification. Now, this convention or declaration on biodiversity is related to CBD. So, statement 1 is wrong. This is not related to UNFCCC. Second, they're saying legally binding. Third, it is saying, of course, this is also not legally binding. Okay. Third is at this conference, the countries make land degradation neutrality a national target. See, the concept of LDN or land degradation is mentioned in UNCCD. Okay, so of course this is also wrong. This would not be your answer. So only one statement left is correct. It talks about biodiversity protection and importance of conservation, right? So statement 4 is correct. Now Kunming is a place in China. Okay, so 15th conference of parties which happened. Okay, with this you have one was virtual which happened basically that is related to Kunming. You also had the Kunming Biodiversity Fund because of that, right? And the second thing was the second meeting which happened in Montreal in Canada. Okay, so this is basically the outcome etc of the 15th conference of parties of Convention on Biodiversity. Answer is D, 4 only. All right. Also, some of you are sometimes confused. So I'll tell you, you have the Green Climate Fund, okay, under UNFCCC. It talks about $100 billion per year from developed countries to developing countries, okay. However, with respect to biodiversity, the Biodiversity Fund talks about $500 billion per year. Okay, so there's a difference. GCF is UNFCCC. This, of course, is related to CBD. So that is also something that we need to know. All right. Then moving forward, again, a very important act which we should know, Wildlife Protection Act. Okay. So here, let's see few statements. This act helped India become to become a party to CITES. Absolutely correct. CITES was implemented in the year 1973. Okay, so first statement is correct. Second, National Board for Wildlife is a statutory body under this act. Again, this is also correct. Now, in my lecture, I told you three more statutory bodies constituted under this act. Please write this in the comment section. This will help you recall the concept. Okay. Then, eco-sensitive zones is declared under Wildlife Protection Act. No. Eco-sensitive zone is declared under Environment Protection Act of 1986. Okay, we've also discussed about the Western Ghats. Okay, and how there were two different committees. One was the Gadgil Committee, one was Kasturi Rangan Committee. The concept of eco-sensitive zone, right? So this statement three is wrong. If you eliminate three, okay, and then fourth, Keola Deo National Park, which place? Rajasthan, right? I also spoke about Boma capturing technique, right? It enjoys legal protection under the provisions of Wildlife Protection Act. Yes, absolutely true. Answer is going to be 1, 2, and 4. Okay, moving forward. Now, very important, you have the Forest Rights Act. Okay, so here you have to see statements. It recognizes the rights of the forest dwelling and the other traditional forest dwellers to these rights are recognized. So yes, it does that. In fact, in the lectures we've already seen the individual title rights, ownership rights, and also the community rights are recognized here. Okay, that is very important. Okay, then the responsibility of conservation, etc., is to the Gram Sabha and its and the right holders. That also is true. Fine. And then bamboo, brushwood stump, cane, etc. These are minor forest produce. This also is right. Okay. By the way, if you remember the lecture, we had spoken about the Forest Rights Act and the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Number one. Second, in this, we spoke about how the eligibility criteria is there, right? For example, if you want to be a beneficiary or at least if you want to avail the benefits of this Forest Rights Act, one must be a scheduled tribe in the region. Secondly, they should live for 75 years or for 3 generations. Okay. Then, like for example, that is the title rights. Apart from title rights, we also spoke about the ownership rights, right? So how the minor forest produced and all the things related to the land can be used by the individuals, right? So here all the three statements are correct. The answer is going to be 1, 2, and 3, Forest Rights Act of 2006. In fact, when you read about this, also recall our discussion on tribal groups, on particularly vulnerable tribal groups. That also you should read about. Okay, right? We've discussed what are the kind of rights which are under this. Okay, so the conservation, protection, at least all of this, how this acts create the critical wildlife habitats. So please recall all of that. Okay, then moving on. You have the Compensatory Afforestation Fund Management and Planning Authority. Okay. The Campa Act of 2016. Before this, there was no particular act. Okay. These was only some guidelines which were followed. So first of all, this act is very important because it ensures compensatory afforestation based on the concept of net present value. Now, please tell me in the comment section, what is net present value? Okay. First statement, the law establishes this fund under Consolidated Fund of India. No, it is under the public accounts, okay, of India. That is at the national level. At the state level, you have specific, the public accounts, right? So that is then. Then 70%, 30%, no, it's actually 90% goes to state, 10% is retained by the center. So 2 is also wrong. Okay. So if 1 is wrong, 2 is wrong, you directly get your answer, which is the finance for the Nagar 1 scheme will be paid by compensatory afforestation fund, right? This is 3. In fact, with this question, also try to recall our discussion on the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. Okay, that also becomes very important, and how this compensatory afforestation happens. Okay. EIA, we've also discussed them in good detail, both the concept and the current affairs. Okay. So number one, it is statutorily backed by, they've given a different act, Public Liability Insurance Act. Okay, no, it is under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. So the concepts of eco-sensitive zone or at least the environment impact assessment, all of this is governed or at least backed by the Environment Protection Act of 1986. Okay. Second, so this is wrong, number one. Second, UNEP defines it as a tool to identify environmental impact economic impact, and the social impact, yes, of this prior to decision making. Second statement is correct. Okay, it is asking you which of the following are incorrect. Okay, so statement one is incorrect. Fine. Moving forward, and by the way, in EIA, please try to recall, I had told you that there's a famous bird sanctuary close, very close to the Indian Neutrino Observatory. So please tell me what was that? Number one. And second, the rules of like EIA 2020 rules, which were in the news, what were they? And what were the provisions under those rules? Okay, so that would be very helpful if you are able to recall that. Then we see an important amendment, okay, under which the forest and the wildlife protection, etc., was transferred from the state list to the concurrent list. There are many amendments mentioned here. The answer is 42nd amendment. Okay, this is very important because when the subject moves from the state list to the concurrent list, and we'll see this when we talk of the Forest Conservation Act of 1980, etc. Here, if now the forests have to be cut down for any non-forestry purpose, the approval of the central government becomes mandatory. So this is a very important move. This happened because of the 42nd amendment. Okay. Then there are some important acts mentioned. You have to arrange them in the chronological order. Okay. So I'll just write down the act so that you are able to understand. Water, this act is 1974. Okay, Air Act is 1981, Forest Act is 1980. So yes, these at least 1 and 4 is very close. And then Environment Protection Act is 1986. Okay, so that is there. So of course this answer becomes this 3142. Now I'll just tell you, you have a body known as Central Pollution Control Board. This body is formed because of this Water Prevention and Control Act of 1974. Very important. In fact, however, CPCB also has powers of air pollution related, but it is created under the Water Act, right? In this test, we've already seen many questions on EPA. For example, bodies like GEAC. Okay, we've already seen bodies like Central Groundwater Authority. Also, we've seen in Environment Protection Act, it empowers the central government, okay, to take the necessary steps. Then the concepts or terms like eco-sensitive zone, okay, it all is backed by this. EIA is also backed by this. So yes, it has a lot of important benefits, right? Then the Forest Conservation Act, and then again, remember the 42nd constitutional amendment moved the environmental things into from the state list to the concurrent list, right? Have also seen the important terms like what is compensatory afforestation, all these related aspects, right? So this was the last question of this particular in acts. Here we have seen few questions. So what you should do, you should go ahead, watch the lecture again in case you're not able to recall, and please see the updates. Okay, so updates like, for example, what are the updates in Biological Diversity Act? Question number one. Okay, this was the aspect, this Arita Patti in the current affairs. Environment Protection Act. Okay, we've already seen COP 15 of CBD, Kunming Declaration. What was that? Again, in Wildlife Protection Act, you have a lot of amendments which have been passed by both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So please read about them. Fine. What exactly are the amendments? What they are empowering? Okay, what they are limiting? For example, I'll just tell you the 6 schedules which were already existing have now been rationalized, and now you have 4 schedules. But now, after this, try to recall what are the other provisions or the amendments of Wildlife Protection Act. Okay. Then we've seen Forest Rights Act. We saw compensatory afforestation, Campa Act of 2016. Then EIA, EPA 1986, 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. And the last question when we had to arrange all these things in a chronology. All right. So I hope this has been useful for you. Those of you who still now want to join the prelims crash course can do so in both the online as well as the offline format, in whichever way it suits you, right? Please avail this course at the most affordable rates, right? And book your seats so that you are able to have a strategic edge in prelims. You are able to score very good marks, right? And you are able to get that coveted rank which you have been dreaming about. So we hope that this lecture is useful. Okay, I'll see you very soon in the next worksheet discussion. Thank you so much.